Chapter 44, Threads of Betrayal. It was almost a week after his conversation with Pip when Ben realized he hadn't heard back from either Pip or Adele. Only Sam had informed him that she would be with Jenna for the weekend and promised to check if it was okay for Ben to visit. Ben was fairly certain the real reason Sam didn't want him there was because of the man she had been spending time with at the hotel. He knew he needed to put an end to the abuse by taking Sam to court. He dialed Adele's number. Surely she must have the results by now. Hey, sweetheart. How can I help? I was just wondering if you got the DNA results back for the 2 hair samples I sent the other day. I thought I sent them already? It must have slipped my mind. If you give me a second, I need to check my emails. Won't be long. Do you remember what it said? I'm pretty sure it wasn't a match, or, wait, I found the results. Sending them your way now. You got them? Ben had his laptop open in front of him. Yes, got them. Thanks. Bye. Ben sat there, staring at the attachment without opening it. He knew it wasn't a DNA match, which meant someone else had been in Sam's bed. He looked at the framed picture of Jenna on his desk. He desperately missed her, and Sam wasn't letting him see her. Ben clicked on the attachment, and the results appeared. It took him a few minutes to process what they meant. He held his head in his hands for a while, the weight of reality pressing heavily on his chest. Inside, it felt like he was screaming at the top of his lungs, but not a sound escaped him. You fucking bitch, he thought. He was still staring at the page when the phone rang. This time it was Pip. Hey, Ben, I just received the lab tests. I think we need to talk in person. Can you come see me as soon as you can? What is it, Pip? Just come over when you can. It's complicated. Whatever the lab results were, Ben didn't think they could change much. Still, it was better to hear what she had found, so he decided to head over. There was no way he could concentrate at work anyway. Ben waited at the clinic for half an hour before Pip was free to meet with him. We already knew this is no common medication, so I asked a friend of mine from college who works for one of the largest pharmaceutical companies. I sent her the sample to check in their advanced lab. So she knows what my wife is taking? She knows what's in the pills, yes. And it's weird, she told me. It seems like she's on a drug trial. Does she have cancer? What's in the medicine? No, that kind of meds. It's a mixture of different substances. One of them is used to control violence, but at a lower dosage than what's typically used for violent patients. Then there's something really strange. Actually, you might be able to help us figure out when she started taking these medications. What is it? Progestogens, antiandrogens, and gonadotropin-releasing hormone analogs, also known as GnRH, plus antipsychotics and serotonergic antidepressants, SSRIs. It looks like someone's been crushing these pills together and mixing them. Unusually high in dosage, so she must have been on them for a while to get up to this level, and I am guessing added uppers so she could get out of bed and carry on with her daily life on this amount. In English, please. What are they used for? Many, many reasons, but one common side effect of these medications is a plunge in libido, so you might be able to point out when there was a change. Ben thought about it. He couldn't pinpoint a specific time. Their relationship never had intense chemistry. It started as a trauma bond, and a big part of it was just convenience. Whatever little they had faded a few months after they got together. Pip, sensing the discomfort, tried to soften the blow. Please don't let this make you uncomfortable. Based on the amount of substance we found, this would make anyone completely disinterested in pretty much anything fun. Don't worry. I'm confident it wasn't me. There wasn't any sudden change in her libido, just a gradual decrease over time, especially as we faced serious problems in the past few months. It overshadowed everything else. What we have here is like a random mixture, and we don't know the side effects when they are combined. She might be having hallucinations or doing things and forgetting them. It could be anything. Could she have possibly abused Jenna without realizing it? Unlikely. It's more likely to prevent that from happening. The last sentence hit Pip and Ben the second it came out. So how can we find this doctor and take him or her to court for what he or she is doing to my family? Maybe we should call the police. The doctor took a deep breath and continued. We are trying to narrow down and find this person, but there's another thing that I have to ask. What is it? Are you sure she hasn't been using these medications on you or Jenna? I have a good reason to believe it's for Sam and not for us. Fair enough. I trust your judgment. Now all we need to know is why. Ben's head was spinning. He knew Sam and her power of control over her surroundings. She had been taking it from the time before she met me. All that story about her issues and impotence was a big lie from the beginning, and now I have a very good reason for it. She wasn't ever sick. She had been taking drugs. All those lies about her father, her ex-boyfriend, and her cancer-like unsolvable disease were just a pity party for people to feel sorry for her. Ben was realizing what all those words meant at the same time they were coming out of his mouth. He was filled with disgust. Who would do that? Munchausen syndrome, a psychological disorder where an individual deliberately fabricates or exaggerates symptoms of illness to gain attention or sympathy. Still, I wonder if she knew what she had been taking. Ben sat there, his head about to burst. He couldn't believe how much he had been played throughout his life, and he couldn't understand why. Knowing Sam, I would say she knew all along. Ben's heart was racing at the discovery he made, with Sam's jigsaw puzzle finally coming together. But he had no idea how to reveal it to others. They could now easily move on and focus on Jenna. First of all, Ben needed to take revenge on Sam for all she had done to him, for all the endless lies, for ignoring his feelings, and for manipulating him with a pretend illness. He hated her more than ever. He had stayed and tolerated all the ups and downs, assuming she was sick, but medicating herself to be ill? That wasn't something Ben could feel sorry for. Pip waited a little, letting Ben sink into his thoughts, hoping he might come up with a better explanation. But as time passed, he looked more and more like he was spiraling. Pip had to intervene. So, if she was physically fine and made herself sick for attention, why would she go to all that extra trouble to get a surrogate and egg donor to have Jenna? It matches the profile of Munchausen syndrome, but doesn't match with Sam's personality. They try for attention more often, and Sam was more like a hider and secretive. Pip said, not expecting what was about to come next. Ben burst into tears like a child. Pip wasn't sure which part of what she said made Ben cry like that. She got up, rubbed his shoulder, and tried to calm him down. In the middle of his tears, Ben, with a broken voice, said, "She didn't." "What? What do you mean? She didn't what?" "I was suspicious that Sam had been having an affair. I found a hair in her bed that didn't seem like it was Sam's, so I got one from her comb and sent them to the lab to be tested. I wanted to know if they both belonged to Sam or if one was from someone else." "Was it someone else?" Pip asked quietly, knowing what the answer was. Ben nodded. "The lab results came back saying they are not from the same person, but they are very closely related. The unknown hair was from a female, very young, between 7 and 9 years old," Ben continued, crying. "Jenna and Sam are related?" Ben nodded, more like mother and daughter. Pip was speechless. "You weren't involved in the IVF process?" "I let her handle most of the searching and picking the donor she wanted. Then I conveniently missed the appointment on the day of insemination because the time changed. She made me feel like shit about it all these years, and now I'm guessing it was intentional. I'm also pretty sure Sam had her eggs frozen at some point in the past, maybe before she started all this medication crap. Now you can see how sick I feel. Am I even Jenna's biological father?" Pip was a trained psychologist, but in that moment, she was simply a human grappling with profoundly disturbing revelations. She needed to take a moment to sit quietly and process it all. How did this connect to Jenna's condition? Was it a case of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a mother makes her child sick for attention, but compounded by mental health issues? Was there a genetic component to consider? At least understanding the mother's background could provide some insight into this complex situation. I see this as way too much to process. Now, what are you thinking of doing? Do you want to confront her about any of this? I want to get her to pay for her actions, but Jenna is the love of my life, and she loves her mother. With not much left to do, both needed to think deeply about what the next best action was. They walked outside Pip's office together when Blake ran into them. He had just returned from a week at the beach and looked relaxed and sunburned. Pip had no idea why he had to show up at work on a Friday afternoon after his holiday and not leave them alone. Blake quickly read the room. Something awful had happened. Having already received reports about Jenna's improvement, he knew something else must have gone wrong. "What's going on?" he asked, concerned. Pip shook her head. "Well, the lab results on the pills Sam had been hiding came back. It seems like she's going to great lengths to get attention, like even destroying her body from the inside, potentially since she was in her 20s. Pip quickly walked back to her office, brought back the lab results, and handed them to Blake. He took a quick look, and immediately his face was covered with anger and worry. "These are not the results I expected at all." "What do you mean?" asked Ben. "People with Munchausen syndrome are primarily extroverted. They want others to hear their stories and feel sorry for them. They don't hide their medications. They show them to others and make sure they have many of them, not all in one pill like whatever this is. For that, I'd expect the main component of her pills to be sugar. This is a wrecking ball, man." Blake was visibly concerned. "Pip, I need you to look closer at this matter. Something about this stinks, and you have to figure it out." Ben asked, worried. "Are you implying she needs what she's on?" "She needs it now? Some of them are antipsychotics. Even skipping one can have severe side effects. She must have been taking them for a long time. The dosage has likely increased over the years. That's why her head hasn't exploded, but I wonder if she even needed them in the first place. Was she a sex addict, depressed, and experiencing delusions all at once? Even so, we don't mix these medications for a patient. What is really going on?" "We thought she might have been part of a drug trial," Pip suggested. Her comment drew Blake's attention, but then lost it. "A drug trial where? In Nazi Germany, perhaps?" Blake shot back as someone passed by them in the corridor, unable to hide their surprise at his comment. "Let's head to my office for a more private discussion," Blake suggested. "Sam is from up north, right? That reminds me of a well-known practice founded by 4 highly regarded doctors in our field. They weren't always at the top, but they were clever. After Dale's history came to light, they moved to that area, where mental health was largely ignored and severely underfunded. From there, they rose to prominence, producing outstanding articles and research. Their success primarily stemmed from substantial funding from various sponsors, enabling them to treat patients for free and cherry-pick the best cases. It all seemed legitimate, but no one else could access that level of support from those sponsors, which sparked the rumors. Their high-profile cases also led to collaborations with numerous pharmaceutical companies, allowing them to provide patients for drug trials. Rumors varied from simpler theories, like what you just mentioned, getting rich men addicted to what they invented in their labs, to far more sinister ones, like using patients as sex slaves for wealthy old men. There were even more complex theories suggesting they used hypnosis and telepathy to control the minds of rich men and extract their money. Starting to sound like a cult. Maybe, but no one knows what really happened. They never faced any malpractice charges. They voluntarily shut down, and no one has heard from them since. Well, not that we know of. Ben was busy arranging 3 pens into a perfect triangle on the table. The doctor continued, "Let me know if that OCD of yours becomes a problem. It's on the house. It helps me focus better. It just doesn't make sense that someone would leave their dream job at the top for no reason," Ben replied. "That's the question everyone has been asking. They were audited and inspected more than any other practice, yet there were no negative reports or signs of abuse or mistreatment," Blake said. "That suggests the people involved were very powerful, and everyone was bribed to stay quiet until things got out of control, and there were individuals who couldn't be silenced," Ben theorized. "Or maybe they had enough money to retire and enjoy the rest of their lives without being harassed for doing their jobs," Pip chimed in. Both men overlooked Pip's sarcasm, dismissing her comment as simplistic. "So, what should we do about it?" Ben asked, feeling increasingly overwhelmed and desperate for answers. Um, I don't know," Blake sighed. "You certainly can't ask her. What you've done isn't entirely legal. You might consider reaching out to someone who knows her well. A friend, perhaps." Pip made a snarky remark directed at Blake, but Ben was zoning out and missed it. He knew what he was about to say might cost him dearly, but for Jenna's sake, he had to speak up. Blake and Pip were still searching for a solution. "These pills Sam has been taking, you mentioned they contain serious components?" Does that mean she would notice if she skipped a dose? And what would be the consequences? Is there any chance she could become violent? Are you worried about the one you replaced with a placebo? Blake asked. I'd say she might feel some discomfort, maybe a ringing in her ears, maybe some hallucinations, but nothing too drastic. Unless, by some bad luck, she forgets a few herself, then there would definitely be consequences. But personally, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Ben took a deep breath. He now had everyone's undivided attention. Last week, before the DNA results came back, I assumed Sam was seeing someone, and I thought she was taking those uppers to entertain. Ben began, but Blake interrupted. Wait, what DNA results? Pip quickly summarized. Ben ran a DNA test, and it turns out Sam lied about the egg donor. Jenna is actually Sam's biological daughter. Wait, what? Blake was incredulous. Yup, I'll provide more details later, but let's hear what Ben has to say now. Please continue, Ben. Ben sighed deeply. I was so angry and blinded by it. I wanted to get back at her in her own sneaky way. So I went to her place, took one of her pills for testing, and replaced all 14 of her medications. She's been off them for nearly a week now, and she'll be off until the new batch arrives next Monday. What I need to know is whether there's a chance she might hurt herself, or someone else. Oh, she definitely could, Blake said. With a regular dosage of antipsychotics, we taper off gradually to avoid hitting the patient too hard. Sam has likely been asking her provider to increase her dosage by now, because her current one wouldn't be working anymore. But you can't tell her you've switched them. She might literally kill you, given the withdrawal symptoms. You've got a very complicated puzzle on your hands. Blake had no idea how wrong he was about the last part. We have to do something. Help Ben, think, Pip urged, sounding desperate. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, Blake said. If Jenna inherited something from Sam, then Sam must have inherited something from her parents. I've never seen or spoken to her mother. I don't even know if she's still alive, Ben said. I'd say it's unlikely she's dead. Whether Sam loved or hated her mother, she wouldn't have let her mother's passing go unnoticed. If she's still in touch with anyone at home, they would keep her updated, Blake said. I have no idea how to find her, said Ben. Assuming whatever Sam told you about her mother wasn't a complete lie, we know she's an old woman with a strange daughter. She's probably still living in the same house. Look her up on Facebook or even an old phone book. Go there, find the address, and ask around. Small town folks know each other. Something tells me we don't have much time to mess around, Blake suggested. Despite its simplicity, Ben couldn't argue. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. I'm going too, Pip suddenly said. Ben and Blake turned to her, astonished. I think it's a good idea, Pip. Just go and find the answers, Blake said. Pip and Ben were about to leave when Ben stopped in his tracks. What about Sam? I'm worried she might hurt Jenna without realizing it. I'll call the clinic and make sure they know, under no circumstances, to leave Jenna alone with Sam, Blake assured. They'll follow through, no questions asked. I'll come up with a good reason. Just leave it with me, and I'll take care of it. Now, go. You've got a 2-hour flight to catch if you want to get there before sunset. Blake paused and turned to Pip. Pip, stay for a minute. I need to tell you something. Ben nodded politely and left the room. When Blake was sure Ben was out of earshot, he spoke. I can see what's going on between you two, but promise me this. Do what you're going there to do before crawling under the sheets with him, okay? Find Sam's mom first and hear her out. Who said that's what I'm planning to do? Pip asked, slightly annoyed, mainly because she'd been caught off guard again. I don't care if that's your plan or not, Blake said. You'll be spending hours together, traveling. Things might happen. Make all the bad life choices you want later, but don't screw him. There's a strong chance this will end up in court, and if you've slept with a patient, none of our statements will be considered in court. Other than you possibly losing your license, some very dangerous people might walk free. Do you get what I'm saying? Pip nodded and left. Barely a minute after she left Blake's office, he received an emergency call to attend to a patient. Doctor, we've got a young man in. He is yelling, refusing meds, and he is getting more violent by the minute. His parents are blocking us from giving him an injection. We need you now, before this blows up. Blake sprinted toward the reception, his heart pounding as the chaotic sounds of shouting echoed through the hallway. The young man thrashed wildly, eyes wide with fear, his parents shouting at the staff to stay back. Blake swiftly prepared the haloperidol shot. As soon as the needle pierced the patient's arm, a chilling silence fell, but it didn't last. Within seconds, the young man gasped, clutching his throat. His face turned pale as his airways began to close, each breath more desperate than the last. Shit! Anaphylactic, the nurse screamed, eyes wide with panic. Blake's heart dropped. Adrenaline! Now! Get an adrenaline shot! Stat! The entire ordeal of treating the patient in the near life-threatening situation consumed hours of work and reporting. By the time Blake finally finished, he had completely forgotten to call the clinic where Jenna was being held to warn them about Sam.